Welcome everyone as we're going to take a pause here for a little moment just as people are joining. So we will go ahead and get started here in just a moment, but we're excited that you're here.
Perfect.
Yeah. And Lou, I'm so excited that you're here today too. I cannot wait for this conversation to happen.
Yes, Amanda, I've been looking at my calendar for the past 2 weeks, just waiting for our conversation. So I cannot wait, honestly. I mean, I follow you on LinkedIn often. We've spoke many of times. I'm like, yeah, there's no
Yes.
other powerhouse I want to join in the procurement space than Amanda. So let's do it. Let's do
Oh, you're too kind, Lou. That's awesome.
it. Let's
All
do it.
right. Well, people are joining here. I'm just going to give it one more second. But for those who have joined, thank you for joining us. You'll see a chat option in your panel. And if you want to click that little down arrow and let us know where you're from and where you're joining from, that would be excellent. We will be taking questions throughout the presentation today. So if you have a question for Lou or myself, please also drop it in that chat function. That would be great to see. So as you guys are joining, please drop where you're joining from. We would love to learn a little bit more about you. But let's go ahead and get this party started, shall we, Lou?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. So today we are going to be talking about turning conference insights into effective change management, which Lou, you know from just knowing me, I am all about change management, and
Yes.
it is conference season. So this is going to be good conversation, very timely for us to have with our audience today. So just a little introduction, and Lou, you're all fuzzy in this picture, or at least what it looks like from me. So sorry about that. Um,
It's all right.
so, I am Amanda Prochaska. The way that we're going to do this today, it's going to be a fireside chat. I'll be asking questions of Lou, and then I'll be responding to Lou's comments too and adding on there. So it is going to be a wonderful conversation about change management and conference season. So a little bit about myself. I am Amanda Prochaska. I am the Chief Wonder Officer and founder of Wonder Services. And Wonder Services is all about unlocking the doors to digital success. We know digital transformations are not easy, and we help you not only get the user adoption, but then also help you get a return on your investment. So we are thrilled to be talking about change management today. And I'm also honored to be here with Lou Alexander from ProcurementIQ. Lou, would you like to give us a little bit background on yourself and ProcurementIQ?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely, and thank you, Amanda. And first off, the Chief Wonder Officer is probably by far the best title I think I've seen in ages.
Thank
So
you.
I don't know if I can match that with my clinical title as the head of revenue, but my name is Lou Alexander. I'm the head of revenue here at Procurement IQ. And simply what that means is I kind of head up our business development team. Procurement IQ is essentially a market intelligence and market research company, and we kind of help procurement when it comes to having conversations with suppliers and also cutting out that research time when you guys are looking to either develop any kind of category insights or category strategies, et cetera. So yeah, we're just excited to speak with you guys, and I'm excited to be a part of the wonder and the chief wonder officer that I have as Amanda. So I'm appreciative. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you're welcome. All right, Lou. So let's go ahead and dive in. So
Absolutely.
conference season is upon us. A lot of people, actually, I think there's two big conferences going on as we speak. But one of the biggest conferences that we attend, and I know a lot of you listening today, is Coupa Inspire. So what should you do to prepare for a conference like Coupa Inspire or other events to ensure that you get most out of the experience?
Absolutely. So, this is funny because, Coupa is such a different experience, right? There's a ton of different conferences, right? And you're always kind of running at the bit of trying to figure out how do you give the most value. But when I look at Coupa, right, it can be overwhelming, right? You have so many exhibitors, you have so many different speakers, and I think preparedness and preparation is something that's vital. But I look at it essentially as kind of like a three-pronged approach, right? I look at what is your kind of pre-conference preparation? What is your mid-conference during the conference? And then what's your post-conference preparation, right? And so I'll start with kind of like that pre-conference preparation. I think the biggest benefit is just you have to set a clear objection, right? Determine what your aim is in order for what you're trying to achieve in attending these type of conferences, right? If it's either looking at new
Mhm.
technologies or if it's networking or even just talking to potential suppliers, like what does that actually look like? And then for me, and Amanda, you can attest to this as well, is I think LinkedIn and doing your research on LinkedIn with folks that are potentially be a part of that conference, start to socialize with them on LinkedIn, start to have that conversation.
Mhm.
And the reason why that's valuable is because you never want to be that individual that goes to these conferences and all of a sudden you meet someone and you feel like it's just that first interaction, right? It's always great to break the ice on LinkedIn and at least they understand your value add and you can kind of be service oriented by putting yourself in position to at least connect with them. And also they can see that you're a thought leader in the space as well. And then I would go from kind of during the conference, right? Like, what does that look like for you during the conference? For me specifically, I'm a speaker. I love attending keynotes, but I need to find the ones that are giving me the best value, right? And what that means is like if there's any industry leaders, anybody that's kind of having any innovative trends, etc., who are those people that I can connect with and attend those sessions because I know I want to consume that knowledge and then obviously make it applicable to whatever organization that you're working for. And then lastly, I would say post-conference is just what does the follow-up look like for you, right? The follow-up is key. We talked about setting the foundation at the beginning when we look at LinkedIn and we look at obviously, yeah, preparedness, right? But that follow-up is just as important because this is going to be a caveat into implementation insights, right? How you can start to implement some of these best practices and also implement some of the things that you've learned from others in the community. So that's how I would answer that question in its entirety. And Amanda, I'm,
Mhm.
I'm curious, you know, if there's any way you would fill holes or gaps in what I've just mentioned as well.
Yeah, and I think those insights are spot on, Lou. A couple of other things, particularly around Coupa Inspire, I've been going for years now,
Sure.
and some learnings that I've had around how to prepare. They do have the ability to select your agenda in advance.
Yep.
So right now, anyone that's attending Coupa Inspire can go into their agenda and start scoping out what content and what learnings you want to have within the
Absolutely.
conference. So it's super important to do that. It gives you an idea of how you want to structure your schedule, but it
Absolutely.
also helps you get the most out of the conference because you know exactly those topics and the objective that you have. But then you can match that with your agenda. The other thing that I
Absolutely.
want to hit on is what you said about LinkedIn. So what I love to do, because I'm a huge people person, as you know, I
Yeah,
love meeting
absolutely.
people. It gives me such energy. So I'll go in to the conference app or the speaker list, probably both as you get closer to the actual conference, and I will actually pick out the people who I want to meet with, like the
Mhm.
people that, hey, I've never met in person before, but I know on LinkedIn. Or they have a super interesting project that's going on and I want to learn from them and
Absolutely.
understand how they accomplished it. So really diving into making like that must meet list is really important when it comes to the
Absolutely.
networking aspect and learning from your peers. One thing that I love about Coupa Inspire, and I could go on and on about it, is that like there's such a vibe in the hallways of people solving complex problems. So
Absolutely.
it's you can hear the chatter, and I love it because I feel like these are the people who are really changing the game when it comes to procurement, thinking about new ways of doing things, not only how you leverage Coupa, but just broader than that. Like these are the problems that we're experiencing in the source or pay process, and there's just that constant chatter that's going on. So you want to be part of that. If you're going to learn from Coupa Inspire, understand who you want to meet with and how you want to engage with them is going to get you just a great experience at Coupa Inspire and other procurement events that you might be attending.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
Anything to add there before we move on to the next one? And for the folks that
No,
are listening, please drop your questions in chat. That would be awesome.
yeah, no,
All right.
I think you hit the nail on the head.
All right, cool. All right, let's go on to the next one. How would you take what you learned and follow up with the new ideas and practices after the conference is ended, because that's really where the rubber hits the road, right? You have all of these
Yes.
ideas in your head, and now you have to take them back to your job and actually apply them.
Yes, absolutely. I think also it starts with understanding that your organization made a investment and for you to go and attend these conferences, right? I think oftentimes we look at these conferences and we say, hey, I just want to go and consume as much knowledge, but knowledge is not knowledge, or it's not knowledge if it can translate into actionable steps when you are done with these conferences, right? And so it's
Mhm.
crucial to understand that you can translate these into tangible benefits for yourself in your organization, right? And I think when I look at it at a high level, I want to look at, what am I prioritizing once I'm done with the event? So I'm prioritizing my actionable items, right? Meaning that I'm identifying what is the most relevant and impacting ideas that I can now have translate to my organization. And the reason why that's important is because we understand that these things can help you change the focus and also help you change the energy of how your organization is actually operating, right? And down from there, you can start to really develop and have a plan that you can implement, right? I know for myself, I'm always inspired by others, like you mentioned earlier, about what people are talking about when it comes to new technologies, or what are some new procedural things that folks are actually doing in the procurement space, right? I want to understand that. And I'm not saying that you have to take all of what they've taught or all that you've consumed, but it's about developing your own ideas and make it proprietary to how you can push that in your organization, right? And so creating that structure
Mhm.
outline with what you've learned is going to be huge and beneficial. But also, too, one of the things I love, and I'll give her a huge shout out. One of my colleagues, her name is Laura Jimenez, and she does a great job with this specifically. And they always say, I'm married, and they always say, you got to have a woman to give you detail, right? Because it's always great where they can give you the ins and outs of details. And she does that very, very well. And one of the things that she does is she communicates with stakeholders that are all involved internally, right? And why is that important, right? She can take her
Mhm.
insights from the conference and communicate and say, hey, I'm just trying to share key takeaways here about what the conference actually did. And also, too, I'm also trying to figure out if we can manage some of these benefits for our organization internally, and does it make sense? Because now she's not only sharing her knowledge, but she's giving us that knowledge base as well. And when I say us internally, other stakeholders, to actually say, wow, you know what? These are certain things that we can start to apply. And then we can start piloting and testing these practices as well. And then bringing it all together is figuring out how we're going to also monitor it, right? And that's the last part of
Mhm.
this as well, is how are we going to monitor these processes and these management processes as well, when we're trying to adjust in these changes from the information that we've consumed from the prior conference or keynote sessions that we've attended. So that's kind of how I would approach this when I'm looking at what I've learned, is that again, there's a multiple pronged approach to this, but there's a process within the process of figuring
Yeah.
out how you're going to implement that change.
Okay. I love this because
Yeah,
this is an investment, right?
absolutely.
Yes, coming to Las Vegas for Cuba
It's
Inspired, it's
cool.
fun.
Yeah.
Yes, it's fun. But at the end of the day, it is an investment, and to be able to apply the ideas and practices you've learned is a game changer. So going back to not only when I was in corporate, but now in Wonder Services, a couple of key learnings that I had along the way is sometimes you'll get into a session. Let's just say you picked your agenda, you've planned for it, and you get into that session and you're like, they're really not answering my questions in a
Absolutely.
practical way. Because sometimes those presentations can be very theory based versus how, like, the three things you can take away from it moving forward. So if you get into one of those sessions, what I say is own it. Like, if they're not
100%.
answering your question in a practical way, or giving you ideas of how to take those learnings back and apply them, then ask the question, right? In those smaller breakout rooms, all those sessions, you have the opportunity to ask questions. And it just, to me, when I hear people say, well, that session didn't give me any practical ideas, well, that's yes on the speaker, but it's also on you. Like, ask the questions so you can get the most out of that session. You're spending the time there, and it's really about getting that value for your time. So I would encourage everyone, if you're not getting that in a session, to ask the question at the end, give me 3 ways that I can apply this to my practice. The other thing, and this is a very simple idea, but it has changed how I organize my ideas when it comes to these events. If you have a small notebook with you, it really is important so you can be jotting down your ideas and what you're learning. Because I
Absolutely.
know I talk to hundreds of people at these events, and so trying to keep that all in your mind is completely overwhelming. So what I do with my notebook is I draw a vertical line right down the middle. And on the left-hand side of the page is just my general notes. On the other side of my page, the right-hand side of the page, is going to be your ideas, right? So as you're going through a session, or you're having the hallway conversations, or you've heard something at dinner, you can quickly jot down the big ideas. And usually at the end of these events, I have like 20, 25 ideas that are coming out of these conference conversations. And then each night, what I do is I put a circle or a star next to the ones that I
Absolutely.
think are the priority items. So then you don't have to keep it all in your mind, right? It's
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
written down, and you can easily reflect upon what you've learned. The last thing that I think is super cool, and I learned this from one of my clients, is they actually go back and they do a formal presentation around what they learned, which I was like, that
Absolutely.
is super cool.
Oh,
Kind of
yes.
like you mentioned with Laura, if you not only take the time to write down your ideas, but then you take the time to put it into a presentation, like those big ideas, the big rocks that you came out of from the conference, or people that you think you need to have a follow-up conversation with, it's really great to put it into a presentation, not only for the benefit of the other people that you're bringing those ideas back to, but it also helps you solidify why those ideas are good ones,
Right.
for
Right.
your company to apply. And then that just starts the whole ball rolling around, are we going to do anything with these ideas? How do we want to prioritize it within all the rest of the work that we do? So
Right.
those are kind of like the 3 areas that I would recommend for you. Very practical, I think, in a way of how you
Absolutely.
can apply what you've learned after the conference. Okay,
Absolutely.
awesome. Let's move on to the next question then. I can click forward. Okay. What are the things that should be on your checklist before making a change, like deploying a new technology? Because we know, Lou,
Yes.
and how this
Yes.
relates to the topic, we know so many people are going to these conferences because they're looking for the next best thing, or they're looking for, like in Coupa Inspire's case, they already have some Coupa, but they want to expand upon it. So I think this question is really relevant to why you might be going to a conference, and what are those things that you should be on your checklist before making a change, like deploying a new technology?
Absolutely. And you know, I was so excited about this question specifically because we know that you know, deploying any new technology is a huge undertaking and requires careful planning to help with a smooth transition and a successful implementation plan, right? But one of the things that I always feel that you need on your checklist is you need to you need to qualify to in order to quantify if there's a need for the technology that you're looking to deploy. And what do I mean by that specifically, right? Sometimes once we're done with mentioning talking to new suppliers and talking to all these new technologies, oftentimes we are just so enamored by all the things and bells and whistles that it can provide, but we don't take a step back to really qualify and say, does this fit within my organization, right? Because your
Hmm.
competitor might be doing it, and you may have someone that's not a competitor that you know that gave you great insight to this technology. But is it going to be sticky enough internally for you guys to operate efficiently and effectively when deploying this new technology, right? So what that also encompass is understanding how are you defining your objections and goals when it comes to deploying these new technologies, right? How you clearly articulated your objectives and goals, and also are they aiming to align these goals with your organization, like I mentioned prior to, right? I think next is also a lot of folks, and this kind of goes along with the topic, is have you conduct a needs assessment before you actually went to the conference, right? Because we all think that we need something new and something innovative, but if we haven't really looked at the finite details in the challenges and the pain points, what good is that technology going to be in your organization? Because it's not going to align to any business challenges that you guys are actually encountering, right? It's just going to be another tool that's just going to stick on the wall, and it's going to look great in Christmas time because it's another thing that you've added, right, as a present.
Oh, that's
Um, and,
hilarious.
and I think also too, right, this is where you have to do your due diligence at these conference of having prior research and evaluation before you're encountering with suppliers or new technologies as well, right? It goes back to what you mentioned earlier about, know and do the research of the exhibitors that you want to target and you want to speak with, right? And why is that important? Because when we're looking at technology solutions, right, there's requirements that and features and capabilities that may be great for your business, right? But you need to have that research and do your due diligence of saying, okay, is this a operational thing that I'm looking to solve within a process, or is this something that I want to help other products to help me speak to market or whatever the case may be? And I'm just speaking from my point of view as well, and I'm pretty sure everyone else have a different POV. But you have to look at those said technologies to understand if you're doing the research in development and evaluation criteria to help align you. And then I think also too is this is most important, and I wanted to chat about also is
Hmm.
assess your organizational readiness. That is
Yeah.
huge. That is huge, right? Because
Yes.
sometimes as leaders, as owners, as founders, we're always ready for anything new and exciting, right? But is our readiness matching the skill set of the people that we have internally to really roll out a new product successfully? And what does that look like, right? How do we address that? First off, we have to understand if the culture is aligned there, right? If there's cultural alignment. In addition to that, is do we have the infrastructure to support when we are rolling these things out, right? What is the bandwidth of our people? What is the bandwidth of us as
Hmm.
leaders, as founders, right? Do we have that infrastructure aligned? And lastly, is do we recognize the barriers in front of us before we implement any of these new technologies? Because there's going to be a slew of issues that pop up. We know this for sure. And again, we take in the excitement from Coupa and we're like, oh yeah, I'm riled up and it's excited. I'm inspired, pun intended. I am inspired right now. And I am looking to grasp these new tools and technologies, but it's not going to be as successful. Your technology is only going to be as successful as the people that adopt it. And how do we articulate that message to the floor and to the people effectively when we're looking at rolling these things out? So that's kind of how I would look at tackling this question, because it's definitely very complex and you have to make sure you have structured process in order to get the most value out of your investment from Inspire and also from the technology that you're invested
Yeah. Oh, you hit on so many items of gold right there. I'm going to expand on a couple of
in.
them. Um,
Absolutely.
this,
Absolutely.
this, so what we love doing with our clients, and I would highly suggest that you take the opportunity to do this as you're preparing for Coupa or other conferences and preparing for a decision like a new technology. We like to take our clients through what we call a case for change workshop, and it kind of, Lou, goes back to what you were saying. So first of all, understanding the problem that you're trying to solve for. And I know that sounds really basic, but often we'll go into clients and we're like, what problem are you trying to solve? And they're like, well, we're deploying this new technology because everyone else is doing it. It's like, well, no, that's not like, what is the problem that we're trying to solve for here at your company? And get really crystal clear on that, right? And
Yes.
there might be a couple of
Yes.
problems, but
Yes.
really start with the problem statement first. And then what we do from there is we take our clients through a myriad, actually 8 different areas of capability that we ask them questions to understand, is the technology to solve? Is it a process solve? Is it a people
Absolutely.
issue? So we actually, and I'll read these out to you. So technology is one way to solve the problem. Process is another.
Absolutely.
People, policy, organizational changes is another big one.
Yes. Yes.
Cultural changes,
Yes.
often overlooked aspect of how you could solve a problem. Data and
Yes.
metrics, right?
Hmm.
So in this workshop, we talk about all of them, because what usually happens, and actually I just did this for a client last week, what usually happens is that the solve that you think you're going to go down is maybe part of the solve, but it's not the entire solve, right?
Mm.
So the client that
Mm.
we were working with last week was more around an organizational change, but then all of a sudden cultural stuff started coming out, process, skill sets for your people. So it's amazing when you kind of take a step back and look at this holistically and say, A, what is the problem? And then B, what are these different levers that we're going to pull to actually solve the problem? It's
Hmm.
not always just technology. Okay. In
Hmm.
fact, almost never it's a technology solve just by itself.
Absolutely.
Okay. So,
100%.
and then you said readiness assessment. So this is kind of like we talk about the problem and we try to identify the different levers. But then once we start moving into we're actually going to go forward and do this work effort, we have our clients take it's like over 100 question risk assessment right at the beginning of the deployment. So, and that is to go through each of those different 8 aspects of your of the capabilities that I was just mentioning.
Yep.
And we then identify all of the risks, because risk is not bad necessarily. Every project has risk, but identifying them early and putting mitigation plans in place is
Yes.
absolutely critical. So some people are like, oh, I don't want to talk about risk. Risk is bad. No, it's really not. Not identifying risk is the bad part of any
Oh, yes.
deployment.
Yes.
Yeah. So definitely agree with you on that kind of readiness assessment approach, identifying those risks early, putting mitigation plans in place, because deploying a new technology, whether it's a simple solve or a large implementation, like maybe a source or pay implementation with Coupa, you do have to make sure that you are putting the foundation in place so that you can be successful on that project long term. And that starts by planning for these conferences, right? So under maybe doing a case for change workshop in advance, so you know exactly what you're looking for and what levers you're going to need to pull, and have more educated conversations with those technology providers as a result.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I
Okay.
couldn't have said it better. That's awesome. Awesome.
I could talk about this stuff all day long.
Oh,
But
I'm right there with you, and I even had the inkling of like, oh, do I jump back in like we're playing hopscotch and actually ask another one? But it's perfectly fine.
all
Awesome.
right, so let's go on to our next question then. What are the things that you don't know that you should know by the time you are implementing change? Ooh, and that's a difficult question. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say, Lou, about this
Oh
one.
my, yes. So, as I was pondering on this question, I look at it from a couple of different lenses, right? This is where I think change management and the current state of change management starts to show itself.
Yeah.
There's so many different models of change management, right? We got the Lewin's model, we got the nudge theory, we got all these different models of change management, right? And a lot of the times we rack our brains around trying to consume how do we properly implement change in a time of kind of reaction, right? And let me just start there,
Yeah.
for instance, right? When I look at this question is a strategic question, but we all know that change comes from a reactive behavior, right? And it becomes from a reactive behavior because, like you mentioned before, we as leaders and founders, we start to see the risk of if there's no change involved at all, right? And so now we have to take a step back and we say, okay, well, what are the change management principles and foundation for our business as it's structured today, right? What are some crucial change management principles that we can effectively plan, communicate, and execute? Because if we can effectively plan, communicate, and execute on these change management principles, sustaining that change is going to be easy. It's going to not easy. Let me just step back. It's going to be less difficult if you don't understand that change management principle. So when I look at this question, I say, what should you know that you don't in time is what are your change management principles? Look at historically
Mhm.
when you've made change before, what was the product of that change, right? What was the byproduct of that change? Did we meet a lot of behavioral changes with our people where they were resisting the change? Did we meet a data change in where we were actually identifying what the change was, but did we meet the data criteria that was needed in order to say that that change was successful? You got to have those things in order to make sure that we can implement properly. But I think also too, when I look at this as well is how are we going to create performance and metrics to really scale and measure the evaluation of change as well, right?
Mhm.
Establishing that criteria and measuring, having KPIs, collecting data as you mentioned before, that helps us throughout this change adjust our strategy. So I like to be preventative of objections internally and also when it comes from myself, right? So I'm asking my questions. Well, how am I measuring myself with this change? Is it trying to get everyone riled up about the change that's actually happening? And I'm a huge people person. I start there because, like you mentioned before, people process,
Yeah.
right? But I'm a huge with people because they're going to really allow you to navigate that change successfully. And also, too, they're going to be the byproduct of is this the culture that you want for your organization as well? So we need to assess all of those different areas to really identify, do I have the right performance metrics to evaluate that this change will be successful? And how do I keep my people, and go back to that again, feeling that there's an
Mhm.
incentive for that change as well? So we need to incentivize change along with it. And I think lastly, is knowing your training and development needs. Sometime I go back to the technology because we're just using that as an example.
Yeah.
Sometimes you probably don't have folks that have the technological aptitude to take on these challenges of technology. So you might have to teach them from grass levels, right? Are you bringing in outside resources to come in and navigate those conversations? Or do you trust the people that you have internally to be able to, shift those conversations and focus towards the needs of those individuals, right? So these are all the
Yeah.
things that I would say are full encompassing with some other, value added points, I think, from a process perspective that you can add in. But these are the things that I think holistically at a high level that I would look at when I'm looking for, what I should know before implementing change.
Yeah. So, uh, another topic that I could talk about all day long, Lou, and I think you're right on there. A couple of different things that we've learned along the way, especially over the last 5 years at Wonder Services. By the way, Lou, our 5 year anniversary is on April 1st. So it's a
Oh,
huge time for Wonder.
congratulations.
It's awesome. Yeah, we're so
Awesome.
happy.
Awesome.
So a couple a couple of learnings that we have is that often, let's just say you select a technology and you're going through a change, often it's almost like there's a gravitational pull to be focused just on the technology. But at the end of the day, the companies who do these implementations well, they know that it's always about the people, right?
Yes.
Yes, the technology is an enabler, but the people that do it well, and by the way, only 30% of these implementations are really successful. And that's been a bit of a constant over the last 10 years in procurement, is about 30% of them actually hit their ROI.
Absolutely.
So the people, those 30%, they do it well because they remember at all times it's about the people. It's not about the technology. Yes, the technology has to work. The process around it has to work, but the people need to know how to do their work effectively in that system and understand why they need to make the change. So people first, and there's science behind it, Lou. So we actually brought
Yes.
in a neuroscientist into the team,
Fancy,
and
fancy.
I know, she's amazing. She actually teaches our clients about how the brain responds to change, how all of us are wired.
Awesome.
And so understanding the science behind change management is super important for anyone to go through, because literally the brain reacts to change. Every single person's brain reacts to change the same way. What we
Absolutely.
do with it might be a little bit different, but I think something that you should know, and as you're going through change, is spend a little time studying the science behind change. It goes a long way. Two other quick tips around this that companies get, they don't usually think about it in the way that I'm going to describe it, is that communication is not just sharing information out.
There we go.
Every opportunity, yes, every opportunity for a communication, whether it's an email, a meeting, a one-on-one event, whatever, talking points, the way that you do this well is look at it as an opportunity for feedback.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
it's a different structure in how you are structuring those communications, because so often people are just like, I'm sharing this information out, I don't care about the feedback. No, for change to go well and for you to be agile in that change journey and really understand how that change is landing, every point of communication is an opportunity for feedback. And we have that conversation with our clients so that we can get that feedback back and adjust how we're talking, adjust the questions that we're answering, because we're gathering all of that gold, which is the feedback through those communications. And then the last one that I'll point out is using influencers.
Mm.
We know influencers on social media. There are
Hmm.
influencers within your organizations. And what we see time and time again, no matter what change approach you use, if you don't get your influencers on board, it's not going to go well.
Hmm.
So we do a lot of work with those influencers to activate them, to inform them, to get their feedback, to make sure that they're sharing the good word. If there's an influencer who's what we call a convert champion, so they're not
Okay.
quite on board, but if we do get them on board, they're going to be like the best person ever. So we do a little bit of a different approach for them to kind of get them engaged and asking all those really great questions, because if they're resisting the change, other people are. And so we need to understand why they're doing that so we can help bring them along. So
Amanda,
those
and
are a couple of things. Yes,
Amanda, in that
go
point,
ahead.
because I think that that was very, very, I mean, articulately put, and I want to dive into that influencer piece because I think some
Yeah.
folks miss that specifically, and I think why they miss it is because how do we qualify the profile of that influencer internally, right? Because often, it's qualified by performance, and performance and influence are not synonymous with one another, right?
Correct.
So it's
Yes.
about how do we identify that profile of someone that's an influencer that can help drive that change. And I think that's the difficult part with most organizations. But I would want to hear from you of your experience as well. How did you really qualify that influencer and what went into that
Mhm.
profile?
Yeah. So we actually, with our, we go through 5 different types of influencers,
Sure.
because not all influencers are actually made the same. So once we break it down into those 5, and I'll give you an example of 2 of them.
Sure.
One of them is a super user influencer. So this is Jane, who sits on, who does the work today. She understands the process inside and out. She understands the tech inside and out. She's the one that everyone goes to ask their questions. She's the one that's doing training behind the scenes because nobody else
Absolutely.
is doing it. That kind of person. If Jane doesn't come along with that change, and if Jane is not well informed, the conversation goes like this. Hey, someone comes to Jane and they're like, what do you think about this new technology implementation? And Jane's like, I don't know anything about it. I'm not a fan. You don't want someone like that.
Yeah.
So we want to take a step back and say, okay, for your super user influencers, here are the people that we do. And most of the time, our clients know, right? Once we break it down into those 5 categories, they're pretty quick at understanding who those people are. The
Absolutely.
other example that I'll give you is a strategic advisor. So these are the people in an organization that knows everything about the organization before it's officially announced.
Love that.
Right? You know
Love
those
that.
people. Like
Yes.
they know a reorg is coming before anyone else. They know that someone's leaving the company before anyone else. They know that, hey, this whole part of the organization is like totally resisting this implementation. So you want to bring those people in because they're your informants, right? They're the
Hmm.
ears out
Hmm.
there. They're listening to everything. And you want to ask them to bring that information into the team so that you know kind of what's going on the ground day in and day out. So, and there's usually like, it doesn't take very long for, again, our clients to realize that, oh my gosh, they're Joe and Tim and Tom, they're
Yeah,
all,
right,
they're
right,
all those
right.
people for us. Yeah,
Absolutely.
so I think it really helps breaking it down into the 5 categories of which I gave 2 examples here today.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for that. Love it.
Yeah, you're welcome. For people on listening to us today, if you have questions, we're coming up to the end of our formal questions, so please drop them in the chat. We're happy to take those here in a moment. So with that said, it's actually Q&A. So that works out very well. So
Absolutely.
Lou, can you see what's going on in the chat right now? Because I don't think
Let,
when I'm sharing, I can't see that right now
yes, let me look
for some
here.
reason.
Okay, let's see here. Chat box. I
And it's also
cannot
giving a
see.
moment for people. Okay, you can't see any in there either.
Yeah, no questions in there currently.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we were just so great at answering questions.
Yeah, I think
Um,
there's a technical issue. I just got a note too about the chat box
oh,
question mark. So, okay, got it.
okay,
So yeah, I
okay,
see the questions now. Okay, so now
okay.
there we go. I can actually see. So let me click that again. Where did that go? All right.
We're going through our own change management on the phone as we
Hey,
speak.
listen, this is on
It's already.
demand. If you guys are audience, this is on demand. So if you guys are listening, just see that this is how you can input change now. So it's awesome. Okay, so we got a question from Fiona.
Okay.
Love the suggestions of presentations back to peers and colleagues after conferences. Often leaders making the
Mhm.
investment to send folks to conferences. Um, and let's see, expect those attendees to have true actionable goals when they return and give their presentations. What advice do you have for attendees to help them identify a goal that can truly be actioned and fully realized afterwards versus just
Oh,
sharing as an insight or observation? Whew, whew, coming in hot.
what
I'll
a
let you.
fantastic question.
Oh my God, amazing
Okay,
question. Go ahead. Yep.
so I'll take a first crack at it, Lou, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so I think it really comes down to before you go to the conference, understanding the problems that you're trying to solve or the insights that you're trying to gain at the conference. It really starts there. If you reflect on your business, am I going to Coupa and Inspire to learn how to fix something that's going wrong in Coupa today? Or am I going to Coupa Inspire because I'm looking for a tech bolt-on that's in their marketplace? Am I going because I want to meet as many other people who are using Coupa so I can build up my network of people to bounce ideas off of? Whatever that looks like, I think you need to get really clear on that. Maybe not only for yourself, but maybe have a little bit of alignment with your leadership team to make sure that they're also aligned with that. And maybe they have other ideas of what they want you to gain from that interaction. And then that's what you base your presentation on. So when you're writing your notes down and those ideas that come across, they should be really focused on uh, what you were trying to solve for originally. There might be other ideas that come over that you're like, I didn't even think about this, but that would be awesome to do. for our company, and those maybe could also be presented in the follow-up. So Lou, I don't know what else you want to add to that, but that's where the guidance that I would give. Start with your problem, start with what you're trying to achieve, and then build from there.
No, I think that's perfect. I think that's perfect. I don't want to dilute that answer. We definitely have some more questions.
Okay.
So, and
Okay.
I'll take a stab at the next. So the next question is,
Okay.
what's the most common mistake companies make when implementing new technology? So
Oh,
this, so
okay.
I'll take the initial stab at this as well. So it goes back to what we mentioned in prior slides of the question of, what are some do's and don'ts, tactics, and et cetera, about implementing new technology. I think what we see with a lot of most organizations is start back with what we focused on prior was the people, right? And
Yeah.
clearly articulating your vision to your people about what this technology is actually going to help with specifically, right? Because again, we go back to it. Our needs are completely different and they may differently align. And it's like, how do we get the buy-in from our people? It goes back to what you meant about your strategic user. Do we have
Yeah.
those folks that can be that strategic user or that hyper user that can talk about the actionable steps in order to implementing this new technology? And I think also too, the added advantage as well is there an incentive for that change to happen with this technology specific, right? And also, does it match with the skill set of your people specifically? A lot of times, so many of our folks are used to doing the same things that they've done for a long period of time. And when we come in
Yeah.
and challenge that new technology, it's the fear of where does my value now lie because this technology is replacing certain aspects of my function. And I think we have to now kind of add a layer of saying it is an enhancement and it's a benefit rather than it's just something that's going to replace how you action your day to day. It's going to help you thrive. And also, here's the data. Here is the win stories. Here are the things that can help support that. So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I would look at this holistically as well. Anything you'd like to add there, Amanda?
Yeah, and I'm going to be brief because I think we have other questions
Yep.
that we want to get to. But I mentioned the 30% success rate. The number one reason why through all of these studies that these transitions fail is because of lack of user adoption. So
Absolutely.
if you're facing an implementation like this, I would not proceed forward unless you have a change management strategy and a good feeling about how you're going to implement that, because it is the number one reason why these fail, why you don't get the return on the investment. And so
Mhm.
often you fought so hard for the budget for the technology, and then they're like, the first thing that gets cut is change management. Well, that is like
Yep.
the number one reason why these fail. So I would challenge you to make sure that you keep the budget for change management. And if you don't have budget for change management, to have a very robust approach of what you're going to be doing, so that can be successful at the end of the day and get into the 30% club.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
When facts and statistics meet your actual
Yeah.
implementation. I love it. So we got one more question here, Amanda, and
Okay.
this is more so targeted towards the influencer types in the company. So the question is specifically, what are the other types of influencers within the company? I'll let you kind of end us there with that question.
Okay, perfect. So I mentioned there's 5 different types of influencers. The first type of influencer is what we call a project sponsor influencer. So think of that person as your project spokesperson. So who are those people? There's sometimes more than one. But how do we activate them to make sure that they are being a very good spokesperson on behalf of the project? And that spokesperson also, a common failure is they like to sell this in as that this technology is going to solve all of your problems. We usually coach those people not to do it that way and be very authentic and real about what it's going to take to make this transition. We then also have what we just consider a general influencer. And these are people out in the business that are not at the super user level. They might be in middle management, upper management positions that are going to have an influence on the ability for you to be successful. And the way that we like to describe these people is these are the people that others naturally follow. So there could be a very strong leader that is over your accounts payable department. As an example, the team is going to be looking to their leader to understand which direction they should go. Should they buy into this? Should they not? Should they be on the fence, etc.? So those are your general influencers. And then I kind of already briefly mentioned the third one that makes up the 5, but that is your convert champion. So this is, I'll just name him John. John's out there. John never likes change. We know that John doesn't like change. No matter what change it is, he's not going to be a fan of it, but people look to him still for his action. So if John is out there, we know he's not going to be a fan of this change because he's not generally. Then we have a strategy around how do we get him talking to us, which is great. Like what's the feedback? What are the questions that he has? Because other people will have those questions too. And how do we work with him to bring him along and provide him insights and hopefully create him into a convert, which means everyone's going to be like, John never likes change. Like he never buys into this, but he's buying into this one. Right? People are going to notice that, and it's going to be a huge game changer for you. So that makes up the 5. We have your project influencers, your general influencers, your convert champions, super user influencers, and your strategic advisors.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. Well, thank you for ending us there.
Yeah.
Anything closing? Perfect. There we go.
Well, Lou, I think the next time that we're going to see each other is actually at Coupa Inspire. So yes. I cannot wait to see you all there. And I believe you guys are going to have a booth at Coupa Inspire.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
So we will be there. There will be I want to say 5 to 6 other of our counterparts here as well that'll be there representing Procurement IQ. So we're excited to see anyone that is an attendee, and that will be around the booth areas or in the keynote sessions or even on the run. There's a 5 a.m. run or 6 a.m. run, excuse me.
Oh my goodness.
I'm a runner. I always go out and I like to run. So if you guys want to come join me, please come join me. It'll be awesome. And we can talk Coupa, we can talk whatever you guys want to talk about procurement because we're in the same boat. So I would love for you guys to come out and say hello.
Yeah. And likewise, we're going to be there. We do not have a booth, and that's a longer story. I'm kind of anti-booth because I would love to just be out with the people, chatting with them, and meeting them and understanding what problems they have. But if you guys want to talk more about change management or Coupa implementations, maybe you're a Coupa client already and you would like to gain insights around how to tweak the experience for your end users, I will be there. I would love to have the opportunity to meet all of you. So if you want to talk about change, maximizing your investment in Coupa, I am all game for having those conversations. But I am also not a runner, Lou. So you will not be seeing me on the run. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Lou, for this very insightful conversation. And for those who joined us today or are listening to the recording, thank you so much for being interested in this topic. We hope that you have not only a great Coupa Inspire, but also a great conference season, and you get the most out of all of those insights to take back to your organization. So with that said, we'll be signing off, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much.